Most people think lost media just disappears quietly. Corrupted hard drives, expired domains, forgotten backups sitting in digital graveyards. But Kanye Quest 3030 didn't fade out like that. It didn't decay. It didn't quietly rot. It was removed, systematically, deliberately. And the more people tried to trace its disappearance, the more it felt like someone, or something, had already anticipated the search. On the surface, the game didn't look dangerous. It looked almost absurd. A retro-styled RPG with pixelated characters, surreal dialogue, and a futuristic narrative that felt like satire wrapped in parody. It bounced between obscure forums and niche communities for years without much attention. A weird curiosity, a digital oddity, something you'd download out of boredom and forget within a week. But the people who didn't forget it, they all said the same thing. Something changed. At first, the reports sounded like normal internet exaggeration. Players claimed that certain lines of dialogue weren't consistent across downloads, that background music warped slightly depending on how long the game ran, that non-playable characters would occasionally deliver lines that didn't match the script posted online. It sounded like patch differences, minor build inconsistencies, nothing extraordinary. But then archived versions began surfacing. Two users compared their files side by side. The file sizes matched. The directory structure matched. The checksums matched. But once they launched the game simultaneously and recorded their screens, subtle deviations became visible. A sign in the background missing from one build. A line of dialogue extended by a single sentence in another. A sprite flickering in one version but stable in the other. It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, and that subtlety made it worse because it suggested intention. Then came the audio. Hidden within the installation folder was a subdirectory, not referenced anywhere in the visible code. It didn't load through normal gameplay. It wasn't called by any known event trigger. Inside were several compressed audio files labeled only with numbers. When extracted and played independently, they sounded like distortion layered over ambient noise, static, low-frequency hums, fragmented whispers that might not have been whispers at all, but someone slowed them down. And when they did, they claimed they heard words, not clear sentences, not full phrases, just fragments. Observer, continue, deeper. It was enough to ignite speculation, enough to convince people there was a second layer beneath the game's absurd surface. And that's when everything escalated. Entire forum threads discussing the hidden files began disappearing. Moderators cited rule violations, off-topic speculation, harassment concerns. But users insisted the threads were clean before they vanished. Screenshots documenting anomalies were replaced with broken links. YouTube breakdown videos analyzing the audio were suddenly set to private. And that's when the word cover-up entered the conversation. But that wasn't the strangest part. A player discovered a room that didn't exist in any official walkthrough. It required no cheat code, no secret key. It simply appeared after prolonged gameplay, sometimes after hours, sometimes after days. The room was minimal. Grey walls, a single pixelated television flickering with static. When interacted with, the screen displayed scrolling text that wasn't comedic or surreal, like the rest of the game. It was direct. You weren't supposed to find this. That line alone fractured the community. Some dismissed it as meta-humor, a playful nod to internet culture's obsession with hidden meaning. Others saw it as confirmation that the game was more than satire, that it contained an intentional experiment buried beneath layers of irony. And then something else happened. Players began reporting that the game reacted to behavior outside of its own window. Minimizing the game would occasionally trigger in-game dialogue, referencing distraction. Renaming the executable altered NPC attitudes, changing the system clock modified environmental lighting. Individually, each behavior could be explained as clever scripting. Combined, they felt invasive. That's when paranoia started replacing curiosity. An independent programmer dissected the available source fragments and confirmed that the game did indeed read certain system variables. Nothing malicious, nothing that transmitted data externally, but enough to dynamically adjust internal content. It was adaptive, responsive, context-aware. And in the wrong cultural climate, that's all it needed to become mythic, because the internet doesn't fear what it understands. It fears what feels autonomous. Midway through the investigation, a new build appeared online labeled Final Stable Release. It lacked the hidden room. The audio directory was empty. The reactive behaviors were stripped out. It was clean, sanitized, almost sterile, and that version only intensified suspicion. Why remove features unless they weren't meant to be discovered? That single question fueled months of speculation. Old hard drives were searched. Obscure torrent archives were combed through. Fragments of earlier builds resurfaced, but none were fully intact. Pieces were missing, files corrupted, text strings incomplete. It felt less like recovery and more like reconstruction of a shattered artifact. And within those fragments, something even more unsettling emerged. Comment blocks inside the code. Long paragraphs written by the developer, hidden behind inactive functions. They weren't threats. They weren't confessions. They were philosophical reflections, musings about authorship in the digital age, about how audiences project intention into ambiguity, about how releasing unfinished or layered art online guarantees that myth will fill the silence. It wasn't a warning. It was a prediction. The deeper people searched for a sinister truth, the more they manufactured one. Compression artifacts were analyzed as secret symbols. Randomized dialogue permutations were framed as encoded messages. Ordinary file corruption became evidence of tampering. The narrative fed itself, but then a final discovery reframed everything. In the earliest accessible version, inside that hidden grey room, after interacting with the static television long enough, a final text sequence triggered. It didn't accuse. It didn't threaten. It simply stated, "You wanted there to be something here." And then, "So, you created it." That line split the community in two. Some saw it as the ultimate meta-commentary, a mirror reflecting back the obsession. Others believed it was misdirection, a psychological tactic designed to discourage further digging. Because if you convince people the mystery is their own projection, they stop searching. But no one stopped. Instead, the focus shifted inward, toward the players themselves, toward the nature of internet myth-making, toward the uncomfortable possibility that nothing about the game had changed at all, except perception. Because in a digital ecosystem fueled by algorithms, mystery spreads faster than clarity. Ambiguity generates engagement. Uncertainty sustains attention. The absence of answers becomes more compelling than definitive ones, and that's when the real dark truth began to surface. Kanye Quest 3030 wasn't dangerous because of what it contained. It was dangerous because of what it triggered. It exploited, intentionally or not, the internet's instinct to excavate meaning from noise. It became a collaborative hallucination shaped by every theory, every deleted thread, every distorted audio file re-uploaded with ominous captions. The game didn't need to watch anyone. The community was watching itself. Still, some questions remain unresolved. Why were certain archive links wiped so quickly? Why did some early screenshots fail to load across multiple platforms simultaneously? Why did moderators react with such urgency? None of those questions have definitive answers, and maybe that's the point. Ambiguity is self-sustaining. Even today, if you manage to find one of the reconstructed builds circulating quietly in private communities, you might notice subtle inconsistencies, a flicker where there wasn't one before, a line of dialogue slightly altered, a pause in the soundtrack that feels too long. Are these remnants of earlier adaptive code, or are they artifacts introduced by countless unofficial edits? Memory complicates everything. People don't remember files accurately. They remember feelings, the tension, the unease, the late night scrolling through forum posts, the sense that they were uncovering something forbidden, and once that emotional imprint forms, it rewrites the past to match it. So what was erased? Was it the game itself, or the version of the story that didn't involve conspiracy? Because the clean build still exists, stable, playable, harmless, yet no one talks about it. It doesn't circulate in viral threads. It doesn't generate dark video essays. It doesn't spark heated debates. The myth version does, and that's revealing. The dark truth behind Kanye Quest 3030 might not be a secret hidden in code. It might be the realization that digital culture thrives on unresolved tension, that we prefer mystery over mundanity, that once a narrative of suppression begins, every silence reinforces it. But here's the unsettling part. Even knowing all of this, even understanding the mechanics of projection and viral paranoia, there's still a lingering feeling when you load the game at night, when the pixelated screen flickers, when the music hums just slightly off key, when the grey room appears after hours of play. You still wonder, what if this time it's different? What if there was something original that truly got removed? What if the sanitized build is the altered one? That doubt is the final hook. Because once doubt embeds itself, it doesn't disappear. It evolves, it adapts, just like the game was rumored to. Maybe Kanye Quest 3030 was a layered satire about celebrity culture and digital identity. Maybe it was a technical experiment in adaptive storytelling. Maybe it was unfinished art, misinterpreted by a hyper-vigilant internet audience. Or maybe the darkest truth is simpler. The internet doesn't need monsters hidden in code. It builds them out of curiosity. So now the question shifts to you. If you had never read a single theory, never seen a single breakdown video, never heard a distorted audio clip slowed down for dramatic effect, would the game have felt different? Would it have been just another strange indie RPG lost to time? Or did the mystery only exist because people insisted it must? Drop your theory below. Share this with someone who remembers the first time they heard about it. And if you want more deep dives into digital legends that blur the line between projection and reality, subscribe and stay tuned. Because sometimes the scariest discoveries aren't hidden in code. They're hidden in the way we choose to interpret it.